Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. As the old saying goes, if you can't have the girl you love, love the girl you have. That's exactly what I did 14 years ago. At the time, I was engaged to the girl of my dreams, Emma, and was looking forward to getting married. However, Emma told me that the travel agency where she worked had offered her a 6-month job as a tour guide in Natal, Brazil. Before we met, she had worked as a tour guide in Madeira for a year, and it was her fluency in Portuguese that gave her this opportunity. She accepted the job. I realized that after 6 months there, she would never again be content to be an ordinary wife in a small Nordic town. So after some deep conversations, we both realized that breaking up was the best thing to do. I thank her for the good times she gave me and wish her all the best for the future. Emma soon found her happiness. Just a month later, she met and fell in love with a pilot for Brazilian Airlines. At the end of the 6-month contract, they were soon married. Shortly after Emma left, I met Olivia. She did her best to comfort me, and it worked surprisingly well. Olivia was pregnant, swore I was the only possible father, told me that abortion was definitely off the table, and begged me to marry her. Olivia was the quintessential girl next door, and my love for her grew over time. We were married 6 months later, welcomed a lovely baby boy into our lives, and then 18 months later, we had a daughter. I work for a construction company. At the suggestion of my boss, I started attending evening classes. Thanks to my contacts in the construction company, we were able to afford to build a beautiful house in a popular area. When our daughter turned 3, we managed to get the kids into a neighborhood daycare and Olivia got a job with an insurance company. Now, I'm 39 years old. Thanks to the night school program, I've been promoted to supervisor of the construction team and I'm earning a pretty good living. The children are now 14 and 12 years old and are doing well in school. Olivia, 37, is still glamorous and was recently promoted to department head at an insurance company. We are a happy family in the eyes of others, and there is no doubt that we have been for the past 14 years. However, just a few weeks ago, everything turned upside down. After Olivia was promoted to department head, what should have been a major happy event for me turned into the beginning of a nightmare. Funny enough, I wasn't even invited to her promotion party. You know, spouses are always invited to these parties. I wondered why I wasn't invited, but accepted Olivia's explanation. She said that nowadays this sort of thing is just a small, in-house event, and that other people's spouses don't attend. As it turns out, the party is far from boring as she claims. Olivia didn't get home until 6 a.m., drunk, hair and makeup a mess, and clearly having a great time. Of course, she vehemently denied any cheating, but the party became a turning point in our marriage and unfortunately, not a good one for me or the kids. Olivia began to spend less time with her family, treating me as if I were some sort of housekeeper, as if it was my job to take care of the house and the car. Yes, her salary has gone up quite a bit, but her personal expenses have increased even faster. Honestly, I really don't see how this is going to benefit our family. To make matters worse, our sex life plummeted from an average of 3 times a week to none in the first 3 weeks. At first, I accepted her explanation, too busy and tired at work to do that. But then I started to feel sick to my stomach because it was obvious that she was still having an affair with some big shot in the company and I was being treated like dispensable trash. After 3 weeks, Olivia finally realizes that a marriage without sex is untenable. She began to make limited attempts to salvage our bedside manner. Ironically, it was my turn to be too tired. Our company just finished a major project and I was temporarily reassigned to do paperwork, organizing documents from the last project while planning the next big one. Fate just loves to play jokes. One day I was having lunch at a restaurant downtown when I ran into a good friend of Olivia's from work. "It's a shame you were sick and couldn't make it to Olivia's promotion fun party," she said. Luckily, though, another department head's wife happened to be on vacation with her parents, so he became Olivia's date that night. I barely managed to spit the food out of my mouth. Wait, what? Sick? I wasn't even invited to the damn party. What the hell happened? She immediately realized that she had let her mouth slip and refused to say another word. This is great. My mind is full of all sorts of unpleasant images, like a magic realist silent movie, absurd and ironic. 2 weeks later, I decided to take action. Our home and contents insurance has always been with Olivia's company and in my name. I called 2 other companies and accepted the best offer. Then I called Olivia's company and canceled my insurance. When the customer service lady typed my information into the computer, she sounded a little surprised. "I'm sorry. Isn't your wife a department head at our company?" I thought to myself, this is exactly the kind of question I want to hear. You know, office gossip is the fastest spreading stuff, and like the old saying goes, a rumor starts out as a feather, and as it spreads it becomes a hen. So I replied, "That's right, and that's precisely why I want to sever all ties with your company. I bet you didn't know that I wasn't even invited to my wife's promotion party. I think you know in your heart of hearts what some of the big shots in your company did to my wife at that party. Now that I've found a better insurance plan, thank you, dear lady, and have a nice day." I couldn't help but laugh when I hung up the phone. It's a great play, and I'm doing a great job of acting it out. It seems that not only did I miss my wife's promotion party, but I also missed out on my own comedic talents. Unsurprisingly, within an hour, a man claiming to be Nick called my office. He introduced himself as a VIP account manager and said that something must have gone horribly wrong and they would do everything they could to make it up to me, and asked me what I wanted. I wondered how canceling such a small amount of insurance could be seen as losing a VIP customer. Apparently, the gossip had spread throughout the company and this Nick was more than likely involved. I decided to continue my improvisation and play something more exciting. "What mistake?" I said, feigning anger. "Did some stupid secretary forget to send the party invitations? Olivia must be crazy. Doesn't she realize how strange it is that her husband is the only spouse not invited? Who would dare to trust a company that can't even get this little thing right? Can such idiots be executives?" Nick seemed to choke on my words and after a moment said, "Sir, it's not nice to call your wife an idiot. I'm sure she'll explain herself when she gets home. Please tell me what kind of compensation you would like." I sneered. "Compensation? Why compensation? For your company to use my wife as a free call girl? This beautiful call girl is worth a lot of money, isn't it? Don't get me wrong, my friend. I mean no harm. Give me a new Mercedes 300 and I'll forget about it." A loud laugh came from the other end of the line. "Good joke. Tell you what, I'll give you a 25% discount on your homeowners and homeowners insurance for 1 year. That's a good deal, isn't it?" I said angrily. "I want you fired. Is everyone in your company crazy?" I hung up after that. When I got home, Olivia was already waiting for me. Her face was red with anger, and she started yelling at me just as I walked in the door. "What the fuck do you mean?" Called my workplace and bullshitted like a madman. It was the first time I'd ever been so angry with her. "What the fuck do I mean? What do you mean you humiliated me at the party like a cheap corporate call girl? I know I'm the only spouse not invited. You and your pimps are the ones who didn't want me there, so you could trade your body for a promotion. If screwing around with company executives is part of your new job, wait for the divorce. I hope you find it worthwhile." I've never yelled at her like that or treated her like that. Olivia was clearly in shock, and she ran into her bedroom crying loudly. The first serious argument in our marriage is over for now, but the storm is far from over. I knew that our marriage was going through its toughest test, and it seemed, was becoming someone I didn't recognize in myself. I found Olivia's cell phone in the kitchen charger. Knowing she wouldn't be coming out of the bedroom anytime soon, I decided to check it out. Yes, it's not very ethical to do so, but at this moment, I've long since lost sight of what's ethical or unethical. Going through her text messages, most of them were from someone named Nick. Apparently, this is the same guy who called me earlier. Oh, how ironic. This Nick seems to be obsessed with Olivia to the point of no return, and judging by Olivia's last reply, his efforts seem to be blossoming. Nick called their relationship a magical KNN and boasted that it was the best night of his life. God, he even sent Olivia a couple of self-penned love poems. Honestly, the quality of those poems is so abysmally bad that it's almost a desecration of literature. I can't help but laugh at the fact that this Nick clearly has no talent for literature other than being an ass-kisser. Although their text messages didn't directly mention that word, the ambiguity was overflowing. I made a mental note of Nick's phone number, which might come in handy in the future. I'm not done with my detective work. I found Olivia's purse and dug out her agenda book. Wow, this is a real treasure. Her girls' nights with her new coworkers were labeled at the LGR, and she went to the Scandic Motel on 3 Friday afternoons. What's even more interesting is that her future plans include another trip to the Scandic Motel the following Friday, and then the following Wednesday night to the romantic Spanish restaurant Grot. It seems that my marriage has come to an end. The only thing to do now is to start the countdown. But how? I left a note for the kids and left the house to go to my favorite bar for a drink and to calm down. Fate always likes to play tricks on people. You'll never guess who I met in the bar, Emma? Yes, the same Emma who ditched me for Brazil 14 years ago. She was there with her brother. They invited me to sit down and we talked for hours. As it turns out, Emma has free airline tickets and comes back to visit her parents almost every year, sometimes alone, sometimes with her family. Over the years, I'd run into her occasionally, usually with Olivia, but each time it was just pleasantries. This time, Emma brought her son to the UK for a month's language training and to stay a few extra days to visit her parents. She's now divorced from that Brazilian airline captain. Emma smiled bitterly and said that the man could not resist the temptation of the beautiful stewardess, and too many times, she finally could not stand it. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of heartache when I heard what happened to Emma. There was a time when I thought she abandoned me in pursuit of a better life, but I never thought she'd get a taste of betrayal. I told her that Olivia and I were also in serious trouble, and I was afraid it would be difficult to undo. We looked at each other and smiled as if to say, "Looks like neither of us escaped the bumps in the road of marriage." We agreed to meet again next month when Emma returns to the UK to pick up her son. By the time we got home, Olivia was asleep, or pretending to be. I didn't wake her up or talk to her. She was still sleeping when I went to work the next morning. My boss noticed I was in a bad mood and asked me to tell him the whole story. I told the truth and said that my marriage could be over in a few weeks. He was very considerate, promised to use his contacts to find me a nice apartment, and said he would recommend to the board that I be put in charge of the insurance quotes for the next big project. I started investigating the asshole who texted Olivia. Nick Thompson, 44, married with 2 daughters, 21 and 18, both still living at home. He works as a department head at the insurance company where Olivia works. Friday afternoon, I drove the company car to the Scandic Motel. I didn't see Olivia's car, so I called her company. They said she just left from work. 10 minutes later, Olivia arrived with a man in his 40s. They went into the cafe and got coffee and sandwiches. I bought the same thing and sat down at their table. Olivia's face instantly turned pale when she saw me. I smiled and said, "Honey, I'm so glad I ran into you here. I had some personal business to take care of, so I called your company. They said you just got off work, and I didn't expect to run into you here. What a surprise." Olivia didn't say a word as I turned to the man and said, "I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Anders, Olivia's husband. May I ask who you are?" "Nick Thompson," he replied. "Oh, you're the funny guy who called me." I chuckled. I was wondering how your company could value Olivia's services so low. I turned to Olivia and asked, "Do you want to come home with me, or do you want to stay here with him? If you prefer to stay here, then don't ever come back." "Olivia's coming with me." In the car, she yelled at me, "What the fuck did you tell him about service?" "What the hell service?" "When he called me, he offered to make it up to me, saying it was to make up for what you guys did to me the night of the party. Your good friend Nick offers about 10% of what a regular hooker would charge." Of course, I didn't take it. After that, Olivia never said a word to me again. She refused to respond to my suggestions for marriage counseling or any topic related to saving her marriage. It wasn't until the following Wednesday that she finally spoke up and said she was going to have a girls' night out with her coworkers and asked if I had any comments. Even if I had a problem with it, she would still go. I said I was fine with it and wished her a good time. After she left in a cab, I waited 10 minutes and then drove to LGR restaurant. There weren't many customers in the restaurant, so I went in easily. I found Olivia and Nick sitting in an out-of-the-way card table. I went out and called Nick's wife, and she said Nick was playing chess with a retired former boss. When I told her Nick was actually cheating on me with my wife, she said she'd be right there to catch them. Then I walked over to their card table and said to Olivia, "Girls' night? That's funny. Honey, this is one ugly girlfriend you've got." I turned to Nick. "Are you really being gay?" Nick realizes he can't beat me, so he stays silent. Neither of them said anything, so I continued. Since girls' night is canceled, we might as well go home. Or maybe we should eat first. By the way, Nick, you'd better hurry up and finish your chess game and catch up with the boss, because your wife is on her way. I think she'd like to know what really happened the night of the promotion party, too. Olivia stood up and yelled at me, "Go home." On the way home, I told her that if she would just come clean about everything and we go to counseling and work on repairing the relationship, we might still be able to save the marriage. She didn't answer. She just kept yelling, "You just can't get enough of that damn party." A week later, the board accepted my boss's proposal. I got a very good female assistant, Lena, but unfortunately she is already taken. We worked to get the best quotes from several insurance companies and make them comparable so the board can make the right decision on equal terms. This is a major undertaking involving huge sums of money. Lena and I worked well together, and we were soon in control. To my delight, we were invited to lunch with Olivia's executives and chairman. Olivia's company is the only local company currently in the bidding process, and it is also the smallest. This time it was their general manager who personally called to invite us. My boss had some ideas for the lunch and gave Lena and I some helpful tips on what we could say and do while we were there. His requests far exceeded our expectations, and he even gave us dress code orders. The company bought me an Armani suit and Lena an Armani professional dress. Lunch is arranged at the best restaurant in town. The insurance company sent all their executives, department heads, and the chairman of the board. I noticed Olivia's surprised face when she saw me in my Armani suit. When she tried to sit next to me, I told her, "I'm sorry, I'd like Lena to sit here because we might need to talk." I saw the hurt look on her face, and the others noticed my cold attitude towards her. Lunch began with a few words of welcome from their chairman. Then I stood up and said, "It's my pleasure to introduce my partner, Ms. Lena Hagen. My name is Anders Eriksson, and some of you may be surprised to learn that I am Olivia's husband. I'm glad to hear that Mrs. Hagen and I were made welcome. I was supposed to meet all of you at my wife's promotion party, but for some reason, I didn't seem qualified enough to attend her important event." I paused for a moment and looked around before continuing. "Of course, I don't mind about that. You have the right to choose who to invite to such an event. But if I'm not good enough to dine with my wife at your company table, then I'm not good enough today. So one of Olivia and I must leave this table. The choice is yours." The whole room fell into a dead silence, so that if a pin had fallen on the soft carpet, I'm afraid it would have been audible. The GM and the chairman both look at Olivia, and she starts to cry. But no one takes any action until Lena stands up and gets ready to leave. At that moment, Olivia burst out of the restaurant. I stayed standing and continued, as I said, "I don't have a problem with the party. It's not just my wife's fault. Apparently, the poor woman was so desperate for a promotion that she agreed to trade her body for it, and therefore accepted the conspirators' request to exclude me. I wish I knew what fucking asshole used her as a cheap corporate call girl the night of the party. I already knew the name of one of the conspirators, who later insulted me even further by offering to compensate me with company money for an amount less than 10% of what a cheap prostitute would charge. Apparently he thinks my wife, or maybe I should say ex-wife now, and I are both pure garbage. He was stupid enough to name what he thought was a reasonable amount of compensation. I suggested a Mercedes, but in his opinion, Olivia is worth 10% of what a whore is. I paused to take a sip of water, then continued, "Of course, I don't want anything from your company." Lena and I assured our manager that there would not be any personal retaliation against your company and that we would treat your company fairly with regard to insurance issues. However, I must say that if your Mr. Nick Thompson and I were sitting at the same table, I would never be able to eat anything unless I threw it all up. So, again, either he goes or we go. There was no silence this time. The chairman yelled, "Thompson, get out." For the rest of the meal, all was quiet. Lena and I spent the day with those responsible for our offer. During the coffee break, their manager and chairman joined us. They told me that my problem was being investigated. So far, Nick Thompson and a VP in charge of Olivia's promotion have been fired, and the investigation continues. The manager told me that they couldn't understand why Olivia would do something like that, since she was already in the normal promotion sequence. Now they had to fire her because there was no way the company was going to keep a department head with such a bad reputation. Back in our office, my boss listened to the meeting as recorded by the recording device in Lena's handbag and was pleased with what I had to say over lunch. I was a little surprised by my performance. I didn't realize I had such a gift for speaking. I may have missed my chance to be a great actor, but at the moment, all I feel is a bitter sense of triumph. When I got home later that day, I found Olivia had left with 2 suitcases and tons of clothes. On the kitchen table, I found a note to the kids that said for them to call her parents for more information. For me, not a word. This indifference stung me, but I also realized that the rift between us was irreparable. Olivia and I filed for divorce, and we sold the house and divided all the property 50:50. I moved into the nice apartment that was ready long ago, and for the sake of the kids, I even had one near my apartment for Olivia as well. Now that we are able to talk again, we occasionally meet at a cafe to talk for children's activities. The kids live in her apartment, but come over to play with me often. Olivia has even become the soccer mom for our daughter's soccer team. We sometimes run into each other at our daughter's games and have a casual chat. Olivia gets a new job in an office, but the pay is nowhere near as good as it was when she was at the insurance company, and even lower than it was before she was promoted. Neither of us has found a new significant other yet. I have to admit that sometimes I miss her, and I think we both regret hurting each other, but what's done is done, and we both know that. Although that infamous lunch cost me my marriage, Lena and I managed to negotiate the best insurance terms ever for the company, which earned us a sizable raise. When Emma came back to England to pick up her son, she stayed at my house for a couple of nights. The sex between us was okay, but it didn't have the same spark it had when we were engaged. I have to admit, the sex life between Olivia and I was much better before her promotion. However, I promised to be Emma's guest on my next vacation to Brazil. I'll never live there permanently and she'll never leave her home country, but it's certainly an interesting country to visit and I'm really looking forward to the trip. Looking back on this experience, I realize that life is like a comedy of the absurd. What we seek often backfires on us, and what we think we've lost can reappear in our lives in unexpected ways. My story with Olivia is, in a way, a story of ambition, betrayal, and redemption. Even though it didn't end perfectly, we all worked hard to create a harmonious environment for the children. Maybe it's called growing up. We all make mistakes, we all have our flaws, but in the end, we learn how to rebuild our lives out of the rubble. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that no matter what happens, I will strive to be a better man and a better father. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.